Welcome back to our channels, Warriors. We are still growing back to back to back. Another special guest, the homie Steve. Steve has a success story. Wow, you guys got to hear this, man. We were chopping it up a little bit before we went on live, and you guys have to hear this. What's up, Steve? How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for the opportunity to have me on your platform.
Oh, no doubt, bro. I got your email. I was looking. I'm like, hey, this fucking dude right here. Plus, you were an army dog, man. You know, I gotta have love for
Yeah,
my show love for
yeah, for
my
sure.
my army guys, man. So tell us where you grew up at.
So I grew up in Chino, California. My with my grandmother, my grandfather, and my father. I didn't really grow up with my mom too much up until maybe the age of, I believe, 6 or 7. They were both, both tecatos and stuff like that for the majority of my life. And so, I grew up in Chino. My dad was involved in the neighborhood. Um, my uncle, and a lot of other family members. So to me, it looked fun. It looked exciting because I was pretty much the only child in that home. I grew up with my grandma and grandfather, so going around with my dad to different places and seeing them all loaded, and to me it was funny. It was interesting. It was different than you go to school and the kids are talking about what they went did on the weekend. Oh, I went with my mom and dad to the beach. I'm like, oh, I went with my dad and his girlfriend to a motel, and they were doing this, that, and that. So to me, it was exciting. It was funny. It was different. Um, yeah, but I did all the trouble I did was always in Chino.
Real
From
real quick,
sure.
you mentioned it was funny, amusing. At any point,
Yes.
did it seem scary seeing your parents out of their element?
No, because my dad made it a point. He made it a point that if anything happened to him, I needed to take over. Like, for example, he would take me with him. I feel like he took me with him all the time when I was a kid to these houses or whatever, when he would pick up or do whatever he was doing, so that people wouldn't, like, mess with him or whatever. And so I would always sit in the truck, and he would always. So we'd be in the truck, and he would get off the truck and tell me, if anybody comes out, or if you see a cop coming, whistle. So he taught me how to whistle as a kid. He taught me how to, honk the horn, let me know. So it was like I felt like a purpose. Like I was his little homie or something. And so I would just sit in his truck and just sit there for hours and hours and hours. He'd buy me candy and stuff like that. So uh, I didn't really mind it. And then there would be, as I got older, maybe 10, 11 years old, we'd be driving and he'd be nodding out on the freeway, and he would, take the wheel, and I'm like holding it. And so I felt like it was funny, but at the same time, it was like I felt like a responsibility of mine to take care of him. But I didn't realize at that time I was just enabling him to continue to do what he was doing, instead of saying, hey, Dad, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go with you to those motels anymore. I don't want to go with you to so and so's house anymore. So he made it easy for me to like that lifestyle and to do the things that he was doing too.
That is wow, bro. That's very like shocking to hear. And you definitely were not enabling, man. That's not enabling at all, bro.
Yeah,
You were just playing the role of
yeah,
a son.
yeah.
Any son will do whatever the fuck their dad tells them to do. You know what I mean?
Oh
Um,
yeah, no, he was the kind where if you didn't, if you, I would hear the belt buckle rattle, and I knew
yeah.
if that belt buckle rattled, I knew that I had messed up. I cussed at him or something, or I didn't
Wow.
do something, or I didn't put the hammer back where it was supposed to be, or whatever. But I mean, he didn't abuse me or nothing like that. Everything was cool. It was just, it was just a discipline as a kid.
Wow, bro. Wow, man. That's very remarkable to be hearing this kind of stuff. So you're experiencing this when you go to school and you're interacting with other kids. Are conversations had? Hey, Bill, what did you do during the weekend, or you kept it to yourself?
No, so a lot of the kids that I grew up with were their dads, or their uncles were my dad's friends.
There you go.
So it wasn't like unfamiliar territory. They would be like, "Oh yeah, my dad, this," and "Oh yeah, my dad did this too," and "Oh yeah, we seen you at this party, and did you hear about so and so getting shot or blah." So it was like in elementary school, I hung around the kids that had family just like that too. But it didn't escalate until we got to junior high, when it was like, okay, like, we're older now, we're going to go into high school, and um, things just started changing. But in elementary school, it was just regular kid stuff. Like I wasn't a bad
Wow.
kid or nothing like that.
Wow, bro.
There was no abuse going on in the house, nothing like that. My dad was a fun dad. He'd get loaded, yeah, he'd do his thing, and then he'd take me to Chuck E. Cheese for 2 hours, and we'd have fun. So he was
For
a good
sure.
dad in that respect.
For sure, man. So walk us into junior high, high school, when things started getting wild, turning up.
So yeah, so junior high was like a switch. It just boom, it was on. I went to I still remember the first time I got we call them slingshots or wife beaters. First time I got one, I felt like I was bad. I was like, oh, I got a wife beater now. I got a slingshot. I could wear it with my shirt off, and uh, you just started seeing other guys in seventh grade dressing, a little bit gangster with Ben Davises and Friscos and Solos and stuff like that. And they were the same kids that I grew up with or some were family members. So it was like we already had our group, and there really wasn't no like a lot of gang banging in seventh, eighth grade. It was just everybody getting stoned and just ditching school and going to house parties and whatnot.
Was this the '90s time frame?
Oh yeah, so once I got the slingshots, it gave me like an instant like man, like I leveled up, like I feel a little bit gangster now or something. And my other friends, they all felt the same thing too, and so as seventh and eighth grade went by, we just kind of just did small stuff, like vandalism, just being little knuckleheads around after school, ditching school, drinking, going to school drunk, stuff like that. And then once high school hit, then it was just a completely different ballgame.
What year did you hit high school?
I want to say it was 90. I want to say 96 was
'96.
yeah, 96 was my sophomore year. I lasted maybe about a month into it. And that's when my grandmother and my grandfather, my dad was already busted. He was I don't remember where he was at that time. Like, I don't know, Pleasantville or
State prison.
Jamestown or yeah, he was already upstate somewhere. And I remember him being in there made me feel like a little bit gangster too for some reason. It was like just knowing that my dad was there, like, oh, okay, cool. To me, I thought it was cool. Uh, but what started happening was, once he was gone, my grandma and grandfather, they weren't going to spank me or nothing like that. They were going to really discipline me. But I never disrespected them. I never, talked back to them. I always did everything in the cuts. I acted one way in front of them and I acted a different way, outside of the home, because I respected them a lot. And I never really brought stuff to the house or anything like that. So when I hit high school, like I said, I was maybe there about a month at Chino High School, and they were like, "No, you know what? You're gonna go live with your aunt and uncle." And my aunt and uncle were hardliners. They were COs at that time. They were both full time. They weren't anywhere close to retiring, and so they were at an institution down south. So I was still maybe about a good 2-3 hours away from Chino. So I wasn't too far away from home. They treated me good. They're never had no issues. I respected my uncle, respected my aunt. They had, kids of their own that were also in high school at the time. And so it was good. I learned a lot being there. This is a good positive part about it was that I did learn how to be a parent and an adult later on in life by remembering the way they treated me and the way they treated their children and the way they treated each other as husband and wife. uh, I didn't utilize that in my younger years because I wasn't about that. Not until I got older and I started remembering like, oh, okay, like, I should do this to my son, or I should discipline my daughter this way, or I should talk to so and so this way. And so I was there and they were hard on me. I remember when I first got there, it was like, I felt like I just got to juvenile hall or something because my uncle threw a box on the floor and he goes, put all your stuff in the box. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, you're not going to wear those kind of clothes in my house. We're going to take you and we're going to buy you new clothes. We're going to get you 3 sizes, 4 sizes smaller. You're not going to wear all white shoes. You're not going to do this. So, they transformed me into, what they wanted me. They didn't want me to be a target out there in the other city where I was at, and I understand now. And so anyways, it was awesome living there. I loved it. I really loved it. But there was still one part of me that was missing was there was zero excitement. There was zero, how do I say, like I wasn't feeling any like adrenaline, like the adrenaline you get when you uh, ditch school, or when you're about to get caught doing something. But it was cool. I mean, it was cool. It was a nice household. It just wasn't what I was used to. I was used to being out all night with my dad, or not going to school the next day because we're somewhere in San Bernardino or a different city, or just wandering around. And so I stayed there for exactly a year. It was my whole freshman year, and I remember 4 or 5 months into it, I actually got really good grades there. To be honest with you, that was one thing I appreciate. I'll talk about that in a little bit, about how they pushed me so hard. My uncle, he played golf, and I learned how to play golf with them there, And so we'd go and play golf, and he would tell me, because I would always tell him, I thought it was just going to be like a 6 month thing, stay there for 6 months and go back to Chino. And so he would tell me, he would give me challenges that, if you really want to go back to Chino, you could beat me on 18 holes. If you could beat me on 18 holes, you can go back. So it took me a year to finally beat him at 18 holes. And in that meantime, they started to see that, I was probably getting stoned or coming home, you know, eyes all red and all that. And I remember one time I came home, and my little cousin, she goes, "You smell like caca." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And I was just stoned. I smelled like weed, I was all stoned. I stunk. She goes, "You smell like caca." And she goes, "And stop eating all my dad's yogurts." I was all just eating all of his yogurts
Yeah.
for lunch. And so those little signs that they're already kind of catching on, like, dude, this, so something's up. So at the institution where they worked at, they had like a scared straight kind of program where they got, inmates that were like lifers or whatever, and guys that were, part of the, big four or whatever, or, and dropped out, and they,
Right.
talking to kids and whatnot. And so all that did, to be honest with you, it like just sparked it, like that enticing feeling of like, wow, I wonder what it's like in here, like, so this is what it's like. It's not that bad, like there's AC all the time. There's, what I'm saying? Like that's the kind of things I was thinking about as a kid, because I didn't grow up with AC. So to me, having AC all the time was like, oh wow, this is nice in here, like no, nobody bugs you or whatever, So anyway, I went to that program, and uh, I just kind of like laughed it off. And I remember one time my aunt tells me, she goes, "Stevie, where do you see yourself in, in 10 years or 5 years?" And I was honest with her, but at the same time, I was kind of like joking. I was like, "Oh, I'll be in prison or dead, whatever." And one of those obviously was fulfilled. It wasn't prison, but it was YA. And she would always remind me of that too. And then what a lot had to do with it was, uh, or in the early '90s, there was a lot of movies that came out, like American Me, Blah Blah, Mi Vida Loca, and I remember watching. I don't know if you know Duke of Earl, that was made by Victory Outreach in the '80s.
Yeah.
So that was another movie. So it was like a lot of that stuff was just. I know those movies were made to steer kids away from joining that lifestyle, but for kids like me, it just made it even more like, you just watch that movie over and over and over again. Watched it, and you just, I enjoyed it, and it sounds sick to think about it now. Like, man, how could a kid want to go to jail? But it was just, to me, it looked exciting. It looked like something like, well, I don't want to be behind a desk, And I remember my uncle used to tell me, he goes, you don't want to be, out, pouring concrete for the rest of your life, breaking your back.
Right.
Get a desk job, do this, do that. And so, anyways, did that scare straight program. Obviously, didn't work. 6 months down the road, um, my aunt and uncle kept on changing their stories of like, hey, if you do good, you can go back. So I'm okay. I'm doing good. I'm doing, and then they told me, okay, well, the school year's over. If you get straight A's in summer school, you can go back. So I got straight A's. I took 2 history classes, got A pluses in them, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to go back. And they're like, oh, well, just stay in, just stay for your sophomore year, stay one more year. And I already kind of felt it, like, man, they're trying to keep me here. Like, I'm trying, and I understand they wanted me to do good. And they used to tell me, if you stay and you graduate high school, you can live with us, and we'll, you go to college and get a part-time job. They were trying to set me up for life. And at that time, I appreciated it, the thought, but I didn't want that at that time. It's not what I wanted. And so I ended up getting straight A's. I got upset because they didn't let me go home. And I was like, dude, I did what you wanted me to do. I got straight A's, and I don't even get straight A's.
Yeah.
you know. And then my uncle tells me one last time, he goes, "You could beat me in this 18-hole golf, at this 18 holes of golf. You go home." And I smoked him on the course, you know. And so I beat him and everything. I even beat my cousin that was there, and one of my uncle's work buddies. I beat all of them, and I was so excited. I was happy, and all my uncle did was buy me a sneaker bar instead. And he goes, "Here," and I was like, "I thought you said I can go back to Chino." He's like, "Oh, we'll talk about that later." So a month goes by, and the school year starts, and I'm like, "Dude, like this is like you got." I felt like they were just lying to me and leading me on. It was a good reason why they were doing it.
Correct.
And so that's when I started, looking through the yellow pages, looking for bus routes. I saved up money, a little bit of money for my allowance. And so one morning, he would leave, I think like at 3, 4 in the morning. Then my aunt would leave like an hour after him. So when they both left to work, I mean, I stayed up all night waiting in my bed, like just waiting for their alarm to go off. And once they left, I remember I threw my duffel bag out or my gym bag out the second story window. I thought about jumping off, and I was like, no, I don't want to break my leg, then I get caught. So I ended up getting a piece of cardboard from my room and a towel, and I laid it down on the staircase or on the stairs. And they kind of had like a half spiral staircase, so I kind of just slid down because the stairs used to make noise, and so I just slid down like real quietly, got up and just walked out the back door and left a note for them. A funny little note saying, "Hey, if you're gonna look for me, I'll be in Montana, Alaska." Just kind of throw them off. I was,
Yeah.
imagination. Just and I felt bad. I told them to, I love you guys. I just don't want to be here right now. And so my mom picked me up. I ended up halfway because I fell asleep on the Greyhound bus and I missed my one of my stops. And so I ended up just calling my mom, and she was living in the Riverside area at that time. And so she went, picked me up, and she goes, "You can't live with me, like I can't take care of you, like and she already had my other little sisters." And so I was like, "No, no, it's okay. I'll go back to Chino." So she, called my grandma and grandpa. They picked me up, went back to Chino. And after that, it really went downhill once I hit back to my old neighborhood.
Wow, dude. So man, you got a taste. You got a taste of like a normal, so on say life.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and you're missing back home, you were missing that environment. So when you said it got worse, what did you go back to doing? What happened?
So when I went back, the first thing I did was say, "Man, I want to get stoned like immediately." And back then there was a lot of homies out. There's a lot of people. There was a lot of us that were my age back then. And so you walk up and down the alley and you'd run into somebody, "Hey, what's up? How you doing? Oh, hey, where you been?" Everybody embraced me back, like, "Man, where you been for a year?" I was like, "Oh, the man, uncle, blah, blah, blah." And so just started linking up with them. And uh, I got, I was able to get back into Chino High School again. So I was only there for maybe 3 months. And I remember uh, at that time, guys that were my age already, like, 15, 16. I think I was 16 when I came back. They were already getting jumped in and stuff like that. And so, when you're in that environment, when you're in the inside, looking in the inside, not the outside looking in, that's what you strive for. That's what your end goal is. Like, I want to get in. I want to make it official. And so, what ended up happening was I was doing a little bit too much. And so one of the guys, I remember he was maybe a year younger than I did. He had already gotten jumped in. And even though he was younger than me, I kind of looked up to him a little bit, like, "Oh, like school me, like let me know what I gotta do." So he goes, "Well, you know what? There's these guys from, the San Gabriel Valley area. There's a few, guys that are, they're starting to like, recruit other guys out here." And, that was during the 90s when there was a lot of guys from LA coming out to the Inland Empire and trying to establish neighborhoods and whatnot. And in Chino, that just it wasn't going to happen. It was a small neighborhood, but it wasn't going to happen. And so I remember I only lived like maybe about a quarter mile from the high school or less. So just walked straight down the street. And I remember my grandpa was there. My grandpa was like, "What, aren't you supposed to be at school?" And I was like, "No, no, they let us out early." I'd always lie to them about little stuff like that. And I remember I got a bunch of knives, steak knives, just random weapons, and solid metal pipes, and took them back to the school and passed them out to the group of guys that I hung around with. And I said, well, what's up? Well, who's going to do this? Is one going to run up to them and just fight them one on one, or are we just going to start sticking them? And so I opened my mouth and I was like, you know what? I'll walk up first and I'll start this, little mini rant. We'll get them off, get them out of the school or whatever. So I waited until the end of lunch, and this was December. I remember it was December of '97 at Chino High School. And I walked up, and obviously I went after the shortest dude, which was closest to my height. I wasn't gonna go after the tallest guy. And so he was about my height, and I remember I tapped him on his shoulder and I waited till he turned around. And I remember I just yelled out the neighborhood and I just stalked him, and we started getting down. Then all of a sudden it just exploded. It was like, 10 on 20. And it was just it was just going on right there, and by the cafeteria and all that. And so anyways,
Did you guys
I
have
was gonna
weapons on you?
yeah, I had passed them all out. Nobody used them, but they had them on them because everybody was too busy fighting. That was just going to be like a secondary option in case they had something, but they didn't have nothing. And at that time, I didn't care, so I took out my knife. It was just a regular steak knife from home, like just regular serrated little steak knife. And I remember I took it out, and the school security, who was actually my uncle's brother, uh, he tackles me. And he tackles me and he tells me, Stevie, what the F are you doing, man? Because he's known me since I was a kid. And he just so happened to work at that high school as security. And he goes, what are you doing, man? I have to turn you in. So sure enough, I told him, no, don't worry about it. I remember I looked up at him. I was like, it's cool. Don't worry about it. So I ended up getting expelled from there, went to a county school, kicked out of the district. And from there, things just got worse. Um, at the county school, there was kids from all over the county that, they'd be from Ontario, they'd be from Montclair, Upland, the local area from, right, like around Chino. And so then we started to have a little bit of beef from other people from other cities and stuff like that. And so those like drugs were real prevalent in that little school. It was only like maybe 20 of us in that whole school. It was like a little thing right behind Little Caesars. It was run by the county of San Bernardino. And so everybody was, always doing lines on the Monopoly board during break, or they're doing bumps in the restroom, or we're smoking, dope in the restroom, whatever. Hey, it's behind the toilet, and then it just got out of hand. It got out of hand to where none of us, we would just show up to school just so we wouldn't, go on probation. It wasn't, we weren't going to like, get educated. We were going there to party and then party after, you know, or to link up and then go party after. And then I just kept on going downhill after that. I remember uh, there was a few murders that happened in '98 in Chino. So then things started to get a little bit more hotter with the cops. There's more cops around. Nobody's really walking the alleys anymore. Uh, and so by that time, I was just like, I kind of like stayed away for like about a month or two. Uh, I got a little part-time job at a golf course, just like, as a bus boy, just to have cash on me. And so I did that, and then I would get off late at night, and it just so happened one of the people that I worked with, they lived down the street from where like a lot of group of my homies would be at. So I'd get off like at 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, can you take me home? But don't take me home. Drop me off at on this street, in this street. So then I'd be not even going home, staying out late. There's no cell phones back then, obviously. So it's just like nobody knew where you're at any time unless you called. And so I would be staying away for 2, 3 days, getting high, partying, just riding bikes around, drinking, doing beer runs, seeing if anybody else from a different neighborhood or different city is, on the streets, or, back then it was real racial. So it was like a black person was not allowed to walk on our streets, not even to be at the parks playing basketball. Like, no, if you're on the court, you got to go. And so it's just that, and uh, so about the year mark, I was back in Chino for a year from the time that I left set down south. And I decided one day I was drunk, I was high, I was stoned, and I told another person that was always around me all the time, and I was like, "Hey, let's go rob a bank." And he goes, "Nah, we're not gonna rob a bank." And I said, "Well, you know what? Let's go rob something else, you know." And there was no fear. Like there was no fear. Like when you're involved in that, the only fear is not getting it right.
Damn.
You know, there's no fear of the cops. There's no fear of getting shot. There's no fear of getting hurt. The only fear is not doing what you said you were going to do, doing it right. You know, doing the mission and doing it right. So he goes, all right. So we both went, and I remember we're in the alley of the business. It was actually a barber shop, and I figured, well, it should be easy, you know. And so we went. We went to another homie's house, and I was getting tattoos and stuff like that, and so he goes, well, here's a knife. He goes, you guys are gonna do what you're gonna do, but just make sure you don't get caught. Just come back here after. We'll talk about it. We'll drink, whatever. So the other person, I told him, hey, just stay right here in the alley. I'm just gonna run in real quick, hold my bike. We both had bikes, and so I walked in. You know, stick them up. Got the money, and it wasn't my time because as I ran out, little did I know, across the street at a liquor store, there was a patrol car, two cops in it. You know, I didn't think about doing a reconnaissance of the area first. Like, walk around the block. Let me tell the other homie, hey, go down the street. If you see anybody, whistle. It was just like, hey, let's just do it. Let's get this done with. It's Friday. I want to party. Let's get some money. Let's go. And sure enough, dude, I ran out, and all I heard was, hey, and it was the cop yelling. And I was like, oh God, man. And so I ran. Um, I didn't want to get the other person caught up. I wasn't going to bring nobody down with me. And I remember I looked at him down the alley, and I said, just get out of here. Just go. And he took my bike, and he took his bike. And I was on foot at that time. So I'm running. It was a foot chase, and I'm, jumping fences. I even threw the money, and
Damn.
I threw the money under the wheel wall of a car on the sidewalk so that he would see it as I was running, but he didn't bother to go get it because he seen the cops too. He's like, well, I'm not gonna go get it. So I'm running, and I run into an apartment complex, and I hit under a car. So back then I was 120 pounds, 5'4". So I just go under the car, and I'm sitting under there and not thinking, hey, they probably got dogs.
Oh
So
man.
it was like a good, I want to say like a 10-minute ordeal of just trying to hide and duck and weave and trying to figure out where's a good hiding spot. And, people are on the street are looking at me like, what's this dude run like? And so once the dogs were there, I said, okay, I'm coming out. I'm coming out. You can't fight the dog. I'm saying, I'm coming out. And I remember I had just turned 17. And I remember the cop threw his knee on the back of my head. And I remember I even yelled at him. I was like, was that even necessary? Like, is that necessary? And to me, it still isn't necessary. Like, dude, I'm 120 pounds. I'm not wearing, obviously, there's no weapon on me. I have my hands out. And um, so, yeah, after that, I went to juvenile hall. Well, first went to the station, and they're asking me questions. Was there anybody with you? Was anybody involved? Who was that guy in the corner holding two bikes?
Oh
Was one of the,
man.
yeah. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, I did this on my own. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. I made up a bogus story. They're like, where'd you get the knife? I said, oh, I got it from home. I brought it from home. And just stuff like that.
What they charge you with? Armed robbery?
It was second-degree armed robbery with a weapon. And so at that time, I didn't know what that carried. I didn't know it was, what the max time was. So I get to juvenile hall, and, they're trying to give me like the max. They're shooting me with 6 years. They're like, your max is 6 years. We're going for 6 years. You could take a plea for 5. I was like, what? I'm not a plea. They're tight. Well, you can try it for 5. I was like, I'm not. I even told them, I was like, I'm 17. I'm not. What are you talking about? Like, it's just armed robbery. I didn't hurt nobody. I mean, yeah, there were still victims involved at that time. I didn't know until I went to like a victims awareness class when I was in YA, and I realized, oh, okay, there really is no victimless crime. Like any
Yeah.
crime, there's a victim involved. And so, anyways, they in juvenile hall. Did you want me to go into the juvenile hall part or?
Yeah, talk to me about that's the first time you're actually incarcerated in some place.
Yes. Yeah.
So, okay, so talk to me about how you, with your experience, you're walking in there. Is there like-minded people in there, or are they heavy? Are they more turned up than you?
So those that know Chino is a little bit more laid back. It's not like, for example, San Bernardino or Ontario or Riverside or Montana, places like that where there's a lot more population of people. There's a lot more gangs. There's a lot more, there's black gangs. There's a lot more going on. So, where I grew up, everybody I kind of grew up with was just kind of like just chill. Yeah, we did our thing. We took care of business when we had to. But it was just a different type of people. So I got there, it was, you had dudes that were like literally, like crack babies. And you could just tell, you're just like, dude, this dude wasn't born right. And you had dudes that were, abused. You had kids in juvenile hall that were just like, just been through stuff that I can't even imagine. And so they're turned up to the max, like them being in juvenile hall, that was probably like their eighth time there, you
Wow.
know. And so I'm there as 17 years old. So I'm already like almost considered old for juvenile hall. And so, yeah, it was pretty crazy. As far as the environment, I mean, I seen dudes getting down while they were taking a dump. You know,
Really? Fighting
dude,
when they
what?
were
Yeah.
going poop?
Well, there was one dude. I remember he was sitting down. It was like the second day I was there, and in San Bernardino Juvenile Hall, there's no restrooms in your cell. It's one man cell. It's a concrete bed, and there's nothing in there. Just a concrete bed. And so they give you these little colored cards, and you slide the card through the seam of the door, and hopefully the staff sees it. And oh, okay, yeah, yellow. I forgot what the colors were, but one of them meant you got to go pee, one of them meant you got to go, you got to take a dump, whatever.
Yellow and brown.
Or yeah, probably yellow and brown. And so I remember they were like, okay, yeah, we'll let you out right now. Do you got to, I just had to go pee, and they're like, okay, yeah, there's a guy taking a dump. Just go on to the next stall. And at the same time, they were bringing another guy in, and I guess he was from a different neighborhood or something as the other guy, and he's seen him through the corner of his eye. And all I remember, I was just going pee, and the dude walked up to him and just started bombing on him while he was taking a dump. And I remember in my head, I was like, dude, this isn't even right. That dude didn't even give him a chance. Like, it was just wrong. And from there, I knew I was like, I gotta be on my toes. Like, I don't even know what's going on right now. Like, I never been schooled on stuff like this. And so, other than that, I mean, juvenile hall was pretty relaxed. I didn't
So
have a wild, didn't fight in there or nothing.
how long they said you were facing 6 years. How long did they actually give
Yeah.
you?
So, once they transferred me to the unit to where like, you have a felony, stuff like that, they transfer you to another unit, then you're there with all kinds of dudes that are murder, attempted murder, rapes, whatever, all that stuff, robberies. And even that unit was pretty laid back. There was, San Bernardino County Juvenile Hall isn't like wild or nothing like that. It's just a bunch of kids. And so I go to court, and they shot me the least amount of time. So I got lucky on that. They said 18 months. So I was all right, cool, 18 months. And in my head, I would always hear stories like, oh yeah, dudes get busted and they get out like in 9 months out of 18, whatever. So I'm thinking the same thing. And so I get transferred to was it SRCC in Norwalk, and that's when reality really really hit. You're wearing your blues, you got your blue jeans, you got your white shirt.
Is that
You
considered
know,
YA?
yeah, yeah. Well, that's a reception center for the Southern institutions at that time when they were open. There's NRCC, which is Northern Reception Center
Okay.
in Stockton or Sacramento, whatever,
So
and
I'm
then
not
SRCC.
I'm not familiar at all with the whole juvenile system at all.
Oh, okay,
I worked the
all right,
adult prisons,
yeah,
and I've always heard, bro. So I'm glad we're talking about this, right? And
yeah, yeah.
you're painting a great picture. So what does
Okay,
the process look like? It looks like you commit a crime, you go to juvenile hall, and then you go to
yeah.
YA.
Well, what happens is when you go to court, the judge will look at different things like, okay, what was your crime? A, how old are you? B, how long have you been committing crimes? C, and so I had a DA reject, which was the one that was from Chino High School where I had the weapon and all that. They threw that out from before, but the judge still brought it up. Say, well, I'm not going to consider it, but you do have the behaviors, but I can't legally put you to it and look at that on the case, but you do have the behaviors already. And then that's when they decided, because I'm those dudes that were for the same crime that I was in there for, and they were getting out. So it just depended on the factors. I think because of my age, they were trying to uh, convict me as an adult. But since I had just turned 17, they're like, well, he's still pretty much 16. So when you go to the youth authority, you don't get convicted. You get committed.
Committed.
Yeah, it's a difference. You don't get convicted of a crime. And I'll go into the legal stuff so you can understand that too later on in life, where my record has disappeared from YA
That's cool.
because you were committed as you were never convicted of a crime.
Okay.
So there's like these legalities that, these rights that you have.
So there you are. You hit the reception, right? White
Yeah.
shirt, blue pants. Did you have
Blue
a brocha?
pants.
Did you have a brocha going?
I hadn't shaved it yet, so it was still a little spotty, it was a little small. It wasn't like how it was in those photos. And so I get to the Southern Reception Center in Norwalk. Everybody there, they're there for felonies. They're not there for, receiving stolen property. They're there for, if it's stolen property, it's, grand theft or something, something over $1,000. And so anyways, get to reception. That's when I really realized, like, oh, okay, like, oh, there's a line. Oh, that's what they mean by walking the line. Oh, there's a yard. Oh, that's what they mean by the yard. So then it started like clicking in my head, like, okay, this is like a little prison for kids. And the cells, it's all cells. There was no dorms. And I get there, and then you have to meet up with the parole board. Not that you're paroling, they just called it the parole board. It's just, people that you sit down with them, they look at your case, and they decide what institution you're going to go to. And so I get there, and 2 weeks after I'm there, okay, it's your date to go and speak to the board. And the lady tells me, okay, so this is what you're here for, blah, blah, blah. You have 2 years. You're gonna do 2 years in the youth authority. And I said, no, what are you talking about? Like San Bernardino County said 18 months. And the lady goes, this isn't San Bernardino County. This is what I say here. You have been committed to us. You're not in their house no more. You're in our house. And I said, I felt helpless. I felt at that time, I was like, it was like a letdown. I mean, yeah, 6 months, it wasn't nothing. But when you're anticipating 18 months and then you get somewhere, I was like, why do I get 2 years? I didn't do nothing wrong. She goes, well, because for that crime, you get 2 years. And youth authority says you get 2 years. And that's when she tells me, just so you know, there is no such thing as good time in the youth authority. There's no such thing as points. It's not like when you go to prison and you get out early, there's no good time of YA. You do 3 years, you're doing 3, or you're doing more, or you're maxing out. And so later on, I realized the reason why they do that. And they explained that to me later on down the road. And so I got 2 years. I went back to my cell and I was mad. And I was speaking to my Sally, and he was from Almani. And I remember him telling me he was there for the same thing. He goes, yeah, man. He goes, I should have told you, but yeah, no, they shoot you with 2 years automatically. And he goes, do you want to smoke? And I was like, smoke what? He goes, well, there's this guy next to us from Compton, and he has some weed on him. And so I'm, yeah, I'll smoke. And in SRCC, it's so old that it's like plastered. And so you can dig in there if you have something sharp, and you can make a hole to where you could pass the light or pass, to the next cell. And on the back of the wall, you could pass magazines and all kinds of pictures. You could fish it all the way down as far as you can. And so he tells me, hey, on the bottom of the bunk, the other day I found a little piece of metal that was like coming off. Why don't we take that off and we can use that to dig in the wall? And at this time, I wasn't thinking about like shanks or contraband or nothing. I'm thinking about, I just want to get high. I just want to smoke some weed. So I tear it off, and he goes, "Are you going to do it or I'm going to do it?" I said, "You know what? I'll do it. Just stay on the bunk and just keep an eye out. If you see staff in the window or whatever, just just keep an eye out. It's not like prison where you could block the windows. Like no, YA, you better leave that thing clear. They're tossing all your stuff up in your cell." So he's like right there looking, and he was eating an apple. And I remember he kept on looking down at the apple, and I kept on telling him, dude, like, keep an eye out, like, listen for the keys when they walk down, listen for the keys, listen for the boots. This is for the radios, whatever. And we're digging. I was digging and digging and digging, and sure enough, man, we got caught. Dude banged on the window and said, "Get down, get out of the cell." They stripped us down, and they shot me 6 months for having a what's it called, a
Possession of
something
dangerous
made
contra
weapon.
possession of
Yeah,
dangerous
made
contraband or actual
yeah.
possession of a weapon.
It was
Probably the
well, I don't know. It got me
contraband.
6 months.
With probably a
Contraband.
piece of metal they got you for.
Yeah, because he seen that I wasn't trying to sharpen it or nothing. He seen that I was
Okay.
just digging in the wall with
Yeah.
it. And so I had to go back to the board, and I had just left like the week before, and I seen the same lady, and she goes, "You're already on a bad start, man. You haven't even gone to where you're supposed to go yet." And she
Oh
goes,
fuck.
"Man," she goes, "I'm giving you 6 more months." And in my head, I was like, "That's a year right now already, you know?" And so at that point, I started just telling myself, I'm just gonna do whatever I want now. Like I was like, I'll max out. I'll max out. 6 years, I'll be 25, get out, I'll be done, whatever, 24. And so after that, it was just, I got real depressed, super depressed. I was like, man, like, I just got a year in like 2 weeks. Like, in 2 weeks, I gained a year. Like, this is depressing, dude. And so, anyways, I started running into guys that, were from my area, from the Inland Empire, and started linking up with them. And, hey, where are you going? Where are you going? And so they shot me to a place on the Central Coast called Paso Robles. Fortunate I went there too. At the time that I went, um, it was still, how do I say? There was still a lot of like gang banging in there. There was still a lot of racial tension and a lot of relas and stuff. So you know, the only schooling that we got was from guys at the reception center, telling us what it's gonna be like when you get up north, blah blah blah. So I thought there was gonna be North Daniels and stuff like that. And I get to Paso, there's no North Daniels.
So,
There's no Bulldogs.
real quick, you mentioned
Yeah.
reglas, and since they just closed
Mhm.
down all juvenile facilities in the state of
Mhm.
California, would you mind sharing what some of those reglas were in right there in YA? I mean, they no longer exist.
Yeah. So every institution had different rules. Like YTS had their own, Chad had their own, Paso Robles had their own. It just depended on where you were at and if there was Bulldogs, Maravilla, whatever, like it just depends on what the rules would change. But from where I'm only going to speak from where I was at. Um, the rules were highly racial. They were all dictated towards uh, people other than white. Like we rolled with the whites rolled with us, and the rules were certain things like even though there was no Northerners where I was at, you still couldn't eat the red apples. You couldn't, if there was anything red, you had to block it out with a marker or a pencil. You couldn't sit down on the concrete. You couldn't sit down on anything other than a chair. And if you did, you had to put a towel down or you had to put some other material down. You always had to keep your nails clean. Even though it wasn't prison, there was still certain things like hygiene stuff that they were trying to implement. And there was things where, like for Pastor Robles, it was you don't talk to a black guy. You don't go if he's at the microwave. You don't touch his ID to move it to put the next place for who's next in the microwave, and you stay 13 feet away from them, stuff like that. And so it was big on like neighborhood stuff. So it was like if you seen an enemy, you ran up on your enemy. There was the only unity in there really was from your own area. So if there was two guys from your area, it was pretty much as you and two guys, you know. And other than that, it was racial. If a riot popped off, then it became then we all united.
What would happen if somebody broke a rule? Somebody gets a big red apple and just takes a big ass bite in front of the homies. What are the repercussions or consequences?
Well, it depends on if he just got there and he didn't know,
No,
or
this
if he's
guy's
gonna.
just going against the grain.
To be honest with you, I don't know. 'Cause I never but I would imagine that he was either trying to go against the grain to see how much he can get away with, or if if he was already like a leva, or if he was already like an out dog, then it didn't matter.
They just beat your
But
ass.
no, they would talk to you first.
Okay.
Whoever had In YA we call them compas, or they were cottages, but we call them compas, whatever. And so there was, one person per compa that not controlled it, but he was usually the guy that had been there the longest, in good standing. So he would talk to you and then either check you real quick on the chin or take you to the cuts, and that's it. You know, it depended on what kind of person it was too. Like if it was someone that nobody liked, then yeah, they're gonna drop him level real quick. If it was someone that was cool and he just messed up one day, hungry, he was hungry, whatever, then yeah, you check him and that's it. Move on.
Were you involved in any riots there, or in
Yes,
YA? In YA,
yeah. So I don't know if you ever heard of Jim TD.
I don't
Jim
think so.
TD. No, okay. So in Paso Robles, there was still a lot going on when I got there. Fortunately, when I got there, things were slowing down. So when I got to the orientation unit, I remember my Sally. He had already been there for a few months, and he kept telling me stuff like, "Yeah, when you get to the main line, they're gonna test you. Someone's gonna run up on you and be like, hey, where you from? Are you a homie or not?" And everybody gets down the first day. That's just automatic to establish, are you a leva or are you not a leva? And so he's talking to me, and I'm listening to him. He was a year older than I am, so I was just sitting there on the bunk. And then 2 days later, he comes in from yard, and he straight up starts telling me, "Hey, you're a B, you're a punk, you're a leva." And I was like, and I didn't realize, wait a minute, he's testing me right now before I even get to the main line. So I stood up, and right when I stood up, we just started going at it in the cell. And we went at it for like, it wasn't crazy. We weren't trying to like shed no blood or bust each other up. He just wanted to see if I was down to fight. And so we got down, and then we shook hands. He hugged me. He let the guy next door know, hey, he's feed man. When he goes to the main line, he's cool. So then I told him, I was like, what's up? Why'd you do that? He goes, because you're a cool guy. I want to make sure you're cool when you get to the main line, so you don't got to get down again. And it didn't matter. The second day I got to the main line, I didn't know about softbacks. I don't know, you know what softbacks are? Okay,
No.
so softbacks are, we had like an upholstery class, or like in YA, they had classes where you could learn upholstery. So every different area had different softbacks. So like all the OC guys had two or three like little sofas where they would chill in the day room. And LA had theirs, IE had theirs, the blacks had theirs. So it was like that. So I didn't know. So I was just waiting with my box when I first got to the main line. I'm sitting there waiting for the staff to tell me where I'm going to, sleep. And I'm sitting on a softback. I didn't know that it was a softback from like, I don't know. I think the dudes are from like LA or San Diego or something. And so the next day, I link up with the guys from the IE, and, I'm talking to them and everything's cool. We're chopping it up. Uh, a guy walks up behind me from LA and he tells me, hey, we're gonna get down. And I was like, I looked up and I looked at the two other dudes, and they looked at me and they're like, better get up. So I stood up and I was like, we want to get down right now? And he goes, no, not right now. We're gonna get down in the restroom. We'll wait till they call the yard to come in and for a restroom call, and they're gonna lock it, and then we can go back, and then everybody's gonna go back out to the yard, but we're gonna stay locked in the restroom in the stalls, and we're gonna like duck down real small, and we're gonna wait. And I was just like, I was very stressed out. I was like, man, like, dude, I just got done getting down like 3 days before, but I didn't get caught or nothing like that, So it was cool. And so the dude was the same height as me, and I didn't bother asking him like, hey, what's this over? What's this about? And so I asked the homies that were with me, and I was like, hey, what's up? They're like, we don't know. Just do it. Just do it. Like, don't be a punk. Just do it. It's all right. So you know, an hour goes by and he looks at me and he goes, come on, let's go. So we go into the restroom, we stay in there, we wait till everybody leaves. And then we get up, and then we started boxing for like a good, I want to say like 5 minutes, until we were winded. And I think we were going for blood, because I walked out and I looked like a raccoon, man. I had two black eyes, a busted lip. He busted the back of his head from the sink. He slipped and fell. And so he had knots all over, but I looked the worst. I just had black eyes, dude, just shut. And so it didn't matter. And why it didn't matter how bad you got messed up. It was about if you got down, you got down. You didn't run, you didn't punk out. So they racked the door, walked out. The staff was like, hold up, what happened? I was like, hey, I got hit by a football. They're like, yeah, okay, turn around. Went to the hole over there in Paso Robles. We called it the boat because it had rivets in there and it was like all steel metal, so it echoed and you could bang on it and it sounded like inside of like an old World War II ship or something. Like
The
it just
cell,
echoed.
the AdSec cell, the whole cell.
Yeah, yeah.
What did it look like inside?
It just looked like sheets of metal with big rivets all the way down. It looked like you're inside of a boat.
Like a cattle truck, like a cattle truck in the military where you can see the
Yeah,
cows on the freeway.
yeah, yeah, exactly like that. And so we were in there for 7 days. And then I think he went back to the unit first, and then I went the day after.
Is there a light in there?
Oh, dude, that light never turns off.
Is there a toilet in there?
There's a toilet in there too, yeah,
A
and a
sink
bunk,
and a
yeah,
bunk.
and a bunk, yeah.
Is it small, confined?
No, actually, it was pretty big for
Wow.
it. I was like, damn, it's pretty. It was like a good, I want to say 10 by 10,
Okay.
good size cell. And so we get back to the unit, and I already know I'm gonna catch time for this. I'm catching time already, like, But it was cool because I felt like, okay, I got paperwork now showing I got down. Like I didn't, nothing bad. So they sit us down and we came up with a story. We just said, hey, we mad dogged each other. We didn't like each other. We just started fighting. And the story came back was, I was sitting on the wrong sofa. Shouldn't have done that. My homie should have let me know that. But it to me at that point didn't matter. They shot me another. It wasn't considered a gang related fight, so I think they gave me like 6 months for that too. I think.
Man, just stacking them
So
up.
yeah, so now I had 2.5 years, and then come to the riot part. I know that was your original question, but I had to tell the other part to
No,
get
that's
there.
good. That's good.
And so the riot part was 3 days later. Uh, the guy that had the keys, the yard, whatever, he starts gathering everybody up. He lets the guys from San Diego know, LA, IE, hey, we're gonna go up against the blacks and the Levas, there was two guys that had gotten dropped Leva that were Chicano from the same neighborhood. And they wanted them off the unit. They didn't want them there no more. They wanted everybody to be feedmen on the yard. And so, and I forgot what happened with the blacks where they're just like, well, the blacks are on the way, so we're just gonna get them too. And so they said, we're gonna do it at midnight. And the way it was built, it was all dorms. And so I was the newest guy there, and so they put me at the end of the dorm, closest to the CO, closest to the others, which would be like the Asians and whatever. And so I was the very last bunk, closest, and I just kept telling myself, dude, this big black dude, once he hears all this stuff going off, he's going after me. And sure enough, at midnight, they had told everybody, hey, homies are gonna throw wet pieces of toilet paper on the cameras, so the cameras won't see. So when everybody gets caught up, there's no evidence who was involved. So they started doing that like maybe a minute before the riot kicked off. Two people got up and they started throwing wet toilet paper and wet paper towels at the cameras, getting on each other's shoulders, get up shoulders, boom, 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 blocking the cameras. And then they kicked it off. Everybody put their laundry bag over their face, tied it up, and then everybody got off. And they made sure that everybody got off. And everybody looked down the bunks. Everybody better be off their bunk. And everybody got off their bunk. And it was like a good 5 minutes. They came in, sprayed everybody, the usual. And that's when Jim TD comes in. It was a big old investigation. A lot of guys from YA, they know the story and everything. Jim TD was where they would abuse what they called us wards. We weren't called inmates. We were called wards because we're wards of the state. And so what the COs would do, they would chain us up, strip us down to just our boxers, and they would shackle us, and they would put black, Mexican, white, black, Mexican, white, or black, white, whatever. They'd mix it up so you were next to a black guy. And so when they did that, it like just infuriated us. We're like, we just got done riding with these guys, and you're shackling us together. And so they walked us I think it was about a quarter mile walked us at 1 in the morning. I remember it was May of '99. I remember that because it was still kind of cold, and they took us to this old gym, and the gym, they laid us out on the floor. Everybody laid out on their stomachs, and every hour you could turn one way, and the next hour you could turn another way, so you wouldn't get too soft or sore. And they did that for 3 days. And if you could only use the restroom once a day, you can only shower once a day. Well, obviously you shower once a day anyways, but you all you ate was they would bring you sack lunches, 2 eggs and a slice of bread and a carton of milk. And the nurse would come and make sure everybody was, alive. And I remember one kid, they picked him up because he pissed, and they picked him up and they slammed him, fractured his shoulder, his jaw. They took him out. And another guy, they were kicking him. And that's when the gym TD came in, where the warden resigned. What was it called? The Surgeon General from Sacramento came down, big investigation about all this abuse that was happening to us. Like, this shouldn't be happening to kids, where they're just, for 7 days, we're in that gym. Some of us were in it for 3 days. A lot of us were in it for 7 days.
Wait a minute, man. You
Yeah.
guys were after a riot. They shackled you guys,
Mm-hmm.
different
Yeah.
race, and they walked you guys to a gym. Everybody's
Yes.
proned out, they shackled up, and every
Yep.
fucking so often you can turn to your side, to your back,
Once an hour. Yeah.
to your other side. One dude
Yeah.
pissed himself.
Shit.
Yeah.
They'd poop their pants, all that, man.
And what the fuck?
Yeah, it was a big investigation. If you look it up, it was May of '99. And that's when they really started investigating all the youth authorities of all this abuse that was going on in other institutions, where COs were, uh, taking advantage of situations and just, pushing kids around and just socking them up. And,
yeah.
And I understand, out of anger. Like, I remember one of the COs was like, I was supposed to be off 4 hours ago, and I'm still here with you chumps, like stuff like that. And it was just like, dude, like, come on now.
we may or may not have happened to do that to the Iraqi insurgents.
Oh, yeah.
Hypothetically.
Yeah.
But this is, California with Americans and some youth here.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. So after Gym TD, then a lot of guys got shot either to YTS or to Chad, which were like the max security YAs. One was up north, one was down south. And then so half the people they were gone. The two dudes that stuck, the two Levas, they got stuck in the ear with pencils and stuff like that. And so the guys that did that, they ended up getting shot straight to. They were over 18. They went straight to, I don't know where they went, Tracy or Avalon, whatever. And so they got shot out. And so whoever was left was just dudes that had just gotten there, like me, and like everybody else that they left. They did it smart. They only left the people that were there, had only been there for like 6 months. So we really didn't know a lot. We were just barely learning. I had only been there like a week or 2 weeks. And then they gave me another 6 months for the riot. So now I'm at 3 years, and I'm like, man, like,
dude, you're just
18 months
stacking
and
that
3.
time.
Yeah, we're just stacking it up.
Talk to me. I mean, wow, dude, man, you were hitting it hard the whole entire your youth. Talk to me about when you get introduced to, was it a soldier? Was it army soldiers on a base?
Yeah. So what happened was, after that, the institution chilled out. There was really no more fighting. Yeah, there's really no more fighting. Everybody really chilled out. Like, I hadn't gotten in another fight. And I know people have their YA stories, like, oh, it's getting down every day or whatever, like, yeah, some places were like that. Where I was at, it was like that when I got there. But after that riot, they really cracked down on stuff. And I didn't get into another fight until I didn't get caught for it, but it was in the blinds. I was helping out a homie, we're trying to steal somebody's pair of shoes is what it was, brand new pair of shoes. And so anyways, I had gotten sent to this unit where I was going to be able to graduate high school. And that's when it made sense, because then I had told, I went up for my parole review, and I was like, yeah, I want to get out. I haven't gotten in trouble for a year, no fights. And they were like, no, you still can't get out. You can't get out of YA until you have your high school diploma or your GED. And I was like, man. So I went to that unit, and that unit was more for like the guys that had been there for a long time, that were just programmed. They're juvenile life. They've been there since they were 13 years old. They're 24. They're about to get out. So it was cool there, you know. So then I went to a pre-parole program, my last 6 months, and that's when I got introduced to the military lifestyle. There was an army camp called Camp Roberts, who I ended up at, who where actually ended up later on in life with the Army National Guard. I ended up mobilizing out of that place to go to Kosovo. That,
Yeah.
that's so it was just everything kind of like coincidental, kind of lined
Right.
up. And so I was going there, and there was this E7 sergeant first class, and he was real hard. Nobody wanted to work with them. The other inmates didn't want like working with them because he was, you know, he was military. And he was they thought he was rude. He wasn't respectful. It's because he requested the respect. You know, where it was the other way around. The inmates want respect, but he was the other way around. Like, no, you give me respect. And so I gave him the respect, and he schooled me on a lot. I actually still have in contact with him. He ended up becoming a sergeant major.
Damn.
He helped me get a waiver to get into the army and all that when I got out. And so I was working range. I was working the range maintenance on Camp Roberts. You know, stapling targets. And I'm still an inmate, mind you. I'm still
Yeah.
under the jurisdiction. I have a little bit of freedom. I can go off base, but there still has to be a CO. And so we started doing stuff in the community. Building gazebos in downtown Paso Robles. And I started to really realize that, man, I'm about to get out. I'm not even thinking about what I'm going to do when I get out. Like, what am I going to do? And so I was like, since I was a kid, I wanted to join the army anyways, you know? And because my grandfather was in World War II, my uncle was in Vietnam. So I was like, you know what? But I have a record now, so I don't know if I'll be able to do it. And one of my messages too that I wanted to say was that if there's ever a dream that, it doesn't matter if you're an adult or a child, if there's a dream and you feel that any mistakes that you've made throughout life crush that dream, dude, trust me, my dream still came true
Facts.
despite, yeah, despite any adversities. I mean, I just stayed on it. I didn't give up. And I know sometimes it can get hard and discouraging, but that guy really put a lot of encouragement into me. And I seen him as like almost like a father figure, you know? And so I got out, and he gave me his cell, not a cell phone number, but he gave me his phone number, his email. I stayed in contact with him. And so when I got out and I paroled, and my conditions of parole were I had to stay on parole for no less than 3 years, which sucked. I had to get drug tested every week,
Damn.
contact. Yeah. YA parole is a whole lot different than adult parole. Trust me, dude. It's like they are on you every single week. And so I got tested. I came up dirty once, and I told my parole officer, I was like, "Hey, little, I'm dirty. I've been partying too much." And he goes, "I'll give you 45 days. I'll see you next month." And I was like, "You sure?" I said, "You can come pick me up at the house. It's fine." He goes, "No, no, I'll give you 45 days. You're doing good, you know." And I was all right. So when I paroled, I was like, "Hey, well, what I want to do?" I called the army, and they're like, "Nope, nope, 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 can't do it." It was 2001. I paroled in 2001, went in 98. So it's 2001. 9/11 hadn't happened yet. So I'm part Native American. I'm a Cosinoan Rumsen, a Carmel tribe, tribal enrolled member. And so I reached out to my chief and the tribal office, and I asked them, what can the tribe do for me that can help? Like, is there any resources? And he said, yeah, there's this place in Reno Valley called the California Indian Manpower Consortium. And they help, natives get into college for free. You just got to pick a trade and they'll pay for it. So I don't know what I wanted to do. I know that I like to do drugs. I know I like to drink. I know I like to party. Why don't I pick something that's all they talk about? I went and became a drug counselor, became a substance abuse counselor, graduated. And once I started doing that, I was like, I got to stay clean now. I just got to. So that helped me out for parole. So I did that for a few years as a drug counselor, working in the detox centers. I would still see people that I grew up with, and I'd see them, but I wouldn't get involved. I would just be, I'd help them out. I'd shoot them extra stuff in the program, just as favors, give them extra bus tickets. And then once my parole, once I got an honorable discharge from parole, went to YTS, went to the parole board, and they said, no, we're going to grant you your parole. I mean, your honorable discharge. So boom, once that happened, called the army. By then, 9/11 had already happened, and got honorable discharge. I think it was 2000 in June of 2004. So we're already deep into Afghanistan and Iraq, and I was super excited. And then the Army told me, "You gotta wait. You gotta wait 3 years after your discharge." And I was like, "Man." So I kept on. I waited. I got a job. I worked. I worked. I worked. I worked. And then I called them, and they said, "Yeah, come on in. Let's do it." So I started gathering all my resources. I contacted that sergeant major that I was, 6 years before. And he goes, "Yeah, I'll write you a letter. I'll say, that yes, you were an inmate. Yes, you did a crime. We're not going to lie about that. Make sure you don't lie about that to the Army." And at that time was during the surge. It was late 2007, early 2008. And, there was a surge in Iraq, and there was another surge in Afghanistan, and they needed people. And they opened up the books for waivers for felonies. And a lot of the homies, they ended up saying, like, how did you do it? How did you get in? I was like, you got to understand, I got in at a perfect time where they were accepting people with no high school diplomas, no GEDs. They wanted numbers in the Army, and I just so happened to be right place, right time. And the only stipulation was they said you have to do a 6-year contract, mandatory. You can't do no 3-year contract or nothing.
I laugh because my buddy Mays, he was an 18-year-old kid. They got his ass for 6 years in the infantry. We used to
Yeah,
clown him.
yeah,
But so yeah, so you got 6-year contract, you said?
yeah. 6-year contract, and I signed it. I didn't care. I wasn't gonna complain or say, "Oh no, no." I said, "No, let's do it," because I was trying to hurry up and get sent to basic training before anything changed, before they changed their minds or anything like that.
Did you get your pick your MOS?
Yeah, I scored really low on the ASVAB, so I didn't really have much of a choice. It was obviously infantry, Cav Scout, artillery. What was it? A combat engineer, and I think like a 88 Mike, like truck driver or something like that.
Yeah.
And so when I was a kid, I set my garage on fire on accident because I love fire. And I remember my grandpa telling me, "You know what? You're always playing with fireworks. You're always getting into trouble because of fire. You always have lighters and matches in your pocket." He goes, "Why don't you join the Army and you could do it for free and get paid for it?" And I always remembered that. And I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna get paid for this now." So I decided to do artillery because it was, I like just hear the boom. And so I picked 13 Bravo MOS, and from
Hell
there
yeah.
Fort Benning. And it was a pretty easy transition, I'll be honest with you, because I was already institutionalized. So you go into basic training and you have all these guys complaining and they're crying, and I'm just like, this is what's wrong with this? There ain't nothing wrong with it. Just do the program, whatever they got to have you do. And so the first part of the Army was pretty easy for me. It's just like being in YA almost, same kind of drama, you know. So
How were you the old guy in basic? Or were you a little older than the younger guys?
I was 26 when I signed, so I was considered old.
Yeah, that's what I'm
I
talking
mean,
about.
yeah, yeah.
Usually they're 17, 18.
Yeah, there was a few guys that were like 40 years old and 38, 39 because they had opened it up to those
Yeah.
ages. And so, yeah, I was 26. I was considered like a grandpa and stuff, they would say. And I'm like, dude, I'm
So you
still
knew
young.
you were going to war without a doubt.
Yeah, the drill sergeants I remember they set us all down and after graduation and right there in Fort Benning. And I don't care what they changed Fort Benning's name to. I'm still going to call it Fort Benning. And they sat us down and they were like, half of you are going to deploy within the next 12 months. And then they start going down the line, then, one or two of you aren't going to make it back. Just like at a Full Metal Jacket, they start, half going over here, half going over there. And I wanted to go to war. I wanted to be part of history. I wanted to, um, I was already changing my life. I was already on the right track. And I was like, man, but I always embraced and I never tried to hide my youth authority experience, my years as a youth of, riding around the streets. And I never hid that from nobody, never try to act different. I remember when I got to my first unit, they would be like, "Oh, he's just a washed up cholo." I should be like, what are you talking about? And I embraced it. I just play, well, whatever. But I think it was exactly a year after I hit my unit. Then that's when my unit had gotten word we were at Fort Irwin at NTC, and I was on a Paladin on a 155 howitzer, and they called us down, and there's we were doing maintenance, taking the tube off, and hey, get down, everybody gather around, get into a horseshoe. And I thought it was for something else. I thought like the commander brought everybody pizza or something. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, cool pizza. We've been out in NTC for like 2-3 weeks already, and so now there was no pizza. They go, we're deploying to Kosovo, and I was kind of excited, but I was like, Kosovo, what the hell is Kosovo? And they had just gotten their independence in 2008. And so now we're going to go there and we're going to secure the area for them. We're going to make sure that, Serbians don't cross the border, Albanians don't fight Serbian, and, back and forth. We're just going to go, they do border patrols pretty much the whole time. So from there, it was on for my military career.
Was
I
it
was like, you know what?
a peacekeeping mission in Kosovo?
Sure was. Yeah. It was peacekeeping mission. I actually, what's crazy is that now, how you see a lot of stuff with human trafficking.
Yeah.
And back then, I remember that was one of our missions was to, if we see any vehicles that has more than 3 females in it, you better pull them over, because usually they were Ukrainian females, or they were Romanian, or they were little girls. I'm not even lying. There was girls that were 10, 13, 14 years old, and they're being sold to people in Russia back when, Russia's not how it is right now, but,
Right.
you cross the border and, Europe, the whole, European Union, you can cross from country to country. You
Right.
don't need passport. So they were bringing girls from that they would kidnap in the U.S. and we'd have bolo list of people to look for and all that. And I mean, back then it was real, and now it's out in the light, and it's
Yeah.
real right now too, man. As much as people don't see it, or just because it hasn't happened to them, it happens to girls every single day around the world, man. And
Right.
it sure for sure was a peacekeeping mission. Nothing popped off over there. Pretty much, it was, we were QRF for a while, because we're, the combat MOS, so they had us like, quote unquote 11 Bravos, but we really weren't. But we're doing a 11 Bravo job,
Right.
and yeah, Kosovo deployment was cool. I was there for 14 months or 12 months, and then went to, WLC for my leadership course at Fort Knox, and I just stayed away. I didn't want to be home, so I never came home. I went straight from Kosovo. I never got the big welcome home parade. And I went straight from Kosovo to Germany to Camp Atterbury, and then straight to Fort Knox to school. Stayed there 45 days, 2 months, whatever. Then went home, and I was home for like a year, and then that's when I got the call for Afghanistan.
So we were talking prior to this interview, and you said that at the time they were sending soldiers to Afghanistan in onesies and twosies instead of
Yes.
deploying whole units to
Yeah.
backfill vacancies. And that's what
Yeah.
happened with you. You're at the pad and you get a call.
Yes.
And can
Yeah.
you start us from there?
Yeah. So I was with a National Guard unit that was attached to an active duty unit, which was the 11th Armored Cavalry out of Fort Irwin. And so I was on a mobilization list. I had just hit E5. I was a sergeant. I was young, and they called me and they said, "Hey, we've seen you qualify for this. You want to be an Afghan trainer, train them in artillery on Russian artillery pieces." I said, "Yeah, I'll do it. How long do I have to decide?" They're like, "You got 2 minutes. We'll put you on hold. Come back. You don't want to go, you don't go." But what they were doing was they were getting National Guard guys to do the individual augmentees to kind of fill in the gaps. And so I accepted it, and I said, "Okay, when am I leaving?" I was thinking like 30 days. They're
Yeah.
like, "No." They're like, "Well, today's Friday. You'll be at Fort Dix in New Jersey Monday morning." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "All right, no, you know what? I'll take it." So 3 days later, start packing my stuff, let my unit know. They sent the orders, and I was on my way.
Oh man, here we go. So you get to where you get to. They give you orders. Now tell us, was there any discrepancies on your order number or anything like that that you didn't get where you were actually supposed to go?
Okay, so mind you, I was a National Guard, Army National Guard soldier. Okay, so there were certain things that active duty that I didn't really understand or I hadn't experienced yet. So I didn't know about liaisons and all this other stuff, and I was always with my unit all the time. And so when I get there, I tell this lieutenant colonel, uh, hey, I was sent to this building that was at the Kabul airfield, and I remember him looking at my papers, and he goes, um, "What? I'm sorry. Actually, he told me, can you email your orders to me?" So I emailed my orders to him, and he printed them out. When he printed them out, he goes, "Nah, this you're supposed to be down the street." And I was like, he goes, "And why are you wearing uniform?" And in my head, I was like, this dude better not be joking with me.
Yeah.
Like just like playing jokes because he knew I was a youngie five, and he just, I was like, I'm sorry, sir, I don't understand what you're talking about. And he goes, "Well, you're supposed to be a mile down the road or 2 miles down the road at a place called Camp Green." And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, "I'm supposed to be in Kandahar. That's what my orders say right here. I'm supposed to be in Kandahar, uh, train the Afghan army in artillery, in Russian artillery." And he goes, "Well, I don't care what your MOS is. Um, your orders say you're supposed to be with a unit that's Special Operations Command. It's a PSYOPs unit, and you're supposed to be with 4th Group, 5th Battalion." And I was like, "I don't know. I'm sorry, sir. I have no idea what you're talking about." He goes, "Well, look, take your clothes off. Do you have civilian clothes on?" I said, "Yes." Let's take your uniform off. Take your ID out. Hide your ID. Hide your dog tags. Do you have a ball cap? You have a hat? Yeah. He goes, put your ball cap on. Put your sunglasses on. I'm gonna call those people. I know who they are. So I'll call their admin and let them know you're on their way for them to come pick you up. Not that I was getting a little bit scared because I was like, I don't understand. I still didn't understand, but I wasn't gonna go against them. Like
Right.
it was a good. I just kept letting him know that I don't understand. So, anyways, these guys show up. A young white dude, young black guy, big old beards, and they walk up, and they're in a blacked out Suburban, bulletproof glass, and the Suburban's dropped down to the ground. And I'm like wondering, like, why is the Suburban so low? Well, it has like 2,000 pounds of armor on it, but you
Yeah.
can't see it. So they pick me up and they tell me, get in. And they're talking to me and they're telling me, give me the rundown. They're like, "Hey, you're no longer sergeant. You're no longer in the army. What do you want to be? Do you want to be an electrician? You want to be a plumber?" I was like, "I don't know. I guess I'll be an electrician or a plumber or whatever." And then I started asking questions. I was like, what do you guys do?" They're like, "Well, we're not PSYOPs, but the unit that we're with is PSYOPs. We're just the support guys." Now, they wouldn't mean support. They're like, "Well, we just drive them to and from ISAF headquarters, to and from the UN, to and from, NATO headquarters, to and from, we would pick up, special forces guys that would do raids at night. We would pick them up in the middle of the field. Black Hawk show up, and we had this little blue bag, and in the blue bag would be like thumb drives, hard drives that they would take from the Taliban when they would do these raids. So to me it was cool. I was like, and all I gotta do is just drive. They're like, "That's all you gotta do is just drive and sit shotgun, and you can be the truck commander, the TC." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I get there and they're like, "Oh, we've been waiting for you." And I'm like, "What do you mean waiting for you?" They're like, "Yeah, the last guy, he passed away like about a month ago." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So at that, I just embraced it and said, "F it, I'm here. I'm here. It's cool. I got my own room. I was considered a contractor, so I got my own room, and then we had our own sink, our own TV, our own sofa. It was super cool. It growed out my beard, grew out my hair. Wore civilian clothes all the time. And then one day, one of the guys gets crabs, and then that's when they told everybody, burn all the sofas, burn all your clothes, and shave your body. I was like, "Dude, this unit is crazy. I don't know what's going on." Right, so there I am shaving my whole body, and then a little bit into it, um, it was the 1 year anniversary. It was May 2nd, 2012, and it was a 1 year anniversary of Bin Laden being killed. And so Obama was out there, and the camp where I was at, it was like almost like a an all nations type camp where it was like no it's like everybody kind of had like all their psyops teams there, you know, like the Germans, the Italians, the French. So everybody was military, but nobody said they were military. Everybody was in civilian clothes. You could just tell, you know. You didn't really see anybody with big old guts, contractors, nothing like that. And so it was like 6 a.m. in the morning, and I get up, and all of a sudden I hear a boom, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what the hell. And then like 2 seconds later, boom, and the windows just blew out from the building, and it was me and three other NCOs, and we automatically knew already, get your gear on, let's rock and roll. And some of the guys, they're already down at the firing positions. What they did was they drove a suicide vehicle up to the front gate and detonated. It was like 500 pounds. It's on YouTube. Just put, May 2nd, 2012, Kabul, Afghanistan. It would show it. The Taliban recorded it. They do their own little
You were in
propaganda
that
and everything.
you were in that base?
Oh yeah. That's when it happened because they thought Obama was there, but
Hmm.
Obama had left Bagram airfield like 3 hours before. But they thought he was there because there was a lot of political people from other countries that were housed where I was at, and so they attacked it because they thought it was going to be a soft target because all they ever seen was civilian clothes. They never seen soldiers wear roll up in Humvees or nothing like that. So they got a surprise. It was like a 5 hour firefight, and at the beginning of it, though, I had ran outside. My NCOIC, he goes, grab the 240 ammo, just like in the movies. It was crazy. He goes, just throw it over. Follow me. We're gonna run outside, and we're gonna give everybody their firing. Everybody at their firing positions. We're gonna check on them. We're gonna give them their ammo, and we're gonna keep on going to all the firing positions and check on everybody, see where everybody's at, take accountability. Well, I go out there. I'm super excited. I'm like, man, this is combat right here. Like we're almost gonna get overrun by this. They blew our gates. All of our cameras were out. So I run out, and he kicks the door open, and I've always been clumsy, and so an RPG came right over as I rolled my ankle, and I hit head first right into the firing position, two herniated discs in my neck, radiculopathy on the left side of my face, my hand, my arm, and blacked out, major TBI. And uh, he woke me up. Like a minute later, I got up and my ankle was swollen. I couldn't get medevaced out for treatment because in Kabul, it's all cities, it's all buildings. Can't, bring a helicopter down, get you. No vehicles could go in and out. And so I went 6 months with that injury of the TBI. I didn't sleep, and I started to lose memory. I wasn't speaking right. I was like slobbering. It was weird. I didn't know what was going on. But luckily, that day when the medic was helping me, he dragged me out from the firing position, and I remember, I don't know why, I told him, I was like, "You better document all this, dude. You better document all of it." And I swear, if he wouldn't, I would have never gotten my 100%. So I remember like 2 days later, I talked to him. I was like, "Hey, I need that paperwork. Like, you documented, right? Yeah, okay." My NCIC signed off on it. Like, no, this really happened. And so anyways, a week later goes by, and I start feeling it even worse, like headaches. I can't see, and we're going back and forth, to different camps, dropping off, colonels and generals and whatnot, picking up sensitive information, and then I started to like see um, differences where like I'm dropping stuff and I'm forgetting the radios on the vehicles and forgetting my nods on the, my truck and just stuff like that. And so I was with that unit for 6 months. They had a little award for me right before I left, right before they found out that I was AWOL,
So,
you
real
know?
quick for the viewers out
Yeah.
there, man, this guy showed up to Afghanistan, and the lieutenant colonel looked at the paperwork and mistook a number and sent him to the wrong unit. Sent him to a special
Yeah.
forces unit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Pretty
here he
much.
is, right? So then you said you were deemed AWOL. The reason you were deemed AWOL is because your original unit was like, hey, where the hell is this guy? He never
Yeah,
reported.
exactly.
So tell us about that.
Yeah. All right. So 6 months down the road, I was already established with that unit. I knew the ins and outs. We were, pulling people over, just we were doing the most, but it was a good time with that unit. They were all high speed. Even the females, they were all high speed. Everybody was high speed in that unit. And they liked me so much to where like they wanted me to like go active duty and go to Fort Bragg with them, and get my wings and all that. And so, anyways, I get an email and saying, you're AWOL. And I'm like, no, I'm not AWOL. I'm here. And then that's when they start figuring it out. Nah, they looked at the orders and they're like, it's one digit off. It's smeared. And so the one looked like a seven, the seven looked like a one, vice versa. And so that was the end of that mission right there. And so it was like a big old farewell. They gave me my combat action badge. They gave me my medals for serving with them, and my combat patch. Like, here, for serving with us, you get to wear, get to wear this, you get to do that, stay in contact with us. And so I wasn't able to go to Kandahar after all. And so I told them, well, I don't want to go home. I don't want to go home. I'm already here. I've been here 6 months. What's up? And so they're like, well, let's find another unit for you. Maybe you could fill in somewhere else. So it took a week and they found another unit for me a mile down the road at a place called Camp Phoenix. And so I got transferred over there, and that's when I had to wear the uniform, and I was being like a stubborn little brat. And I was
Yeah.
like, I don't like this. I
Right.
hate this. I don't want to wear a uniform. Why do I gotta wear boots? Why do I gotta wear, like,
Big
why I gotta,
army.
now I gotta shit. Yeah, now I'm regular army shit and,
No
or
more
stuff.
big
I'm
boy.
sorry.
No more big boy rules.
Yeah, yeah. So I was like, man, dude, like I had to share a room, and I was like, this is retarded. And with that psyops unit, I didn't have soldiers to look over. It's like everybody's individual, everybody runs their own program. But with the other unit, now I had like all these, PSCs and privates to take care of. I'm like, man, I don't want to watch over you. Like, I got to get you up in the morning now. I got to wake you. I got to make sure you're not playing PlayStation at 4 in the morning. We got mission at 5. And so, yeah, it was cool with them too. We ran into a few things, being out on the road and, getting shot at and whatnot. And we accidentally hit a few people like with the tires, people walking too close to the vehicles. Um, so with them, I ended up becoming a part of an Afghan advisory group. So I was still an Afghan trainer, but I wasn't training the army. I was training the Afghan Public Protection Force. And so that was like how you said, now it's like big army stuff. I'm out showing these Afghan dudes that they don't know no English. All they know is hand signals, and I'm trying to teach them how to search a vehicle. No matter what, you got to search all the vehicles, and they're letting guys go through, like through the gate. I'm like, why are you letting these guys go through the gate? Oh, it's okay. It's my uncle. I said, I don't care if it's your uncle. What if your uncle stopped at a coffee shop and someone put a magnetic, you know, claymore on the bottom or something, and wait till they get to the front gate and detonate? And they didn't think about that. And so that job was a lot tougher because it's like you're working with kids, felt like it, that knew, or just adults that didn't know no English, they didn't know no manners really.
Yeah.
But it really put things in perspective, because then I got real close with my interpreter, and started asking him questions like, why do you guys do this? Why do you guys do that? And it helped me out later in life when I came back from Afghanistan, to where I seen things that they really weren't the enemy. Because no one's right, no one's wrong. Their religion isn't right, their religion isn't wrong. Ours isn't right, ours isn't wrong. There is no right and wrong. They squat over a hole. We sit on the toilet, and they see us sitting on a toilet as disgusting, and we see them as squatting over a hole as disgusting. So there's no right or wrong. And so I got real close to him, and he really put his perspective into it, but how they were. And um, I stayed with them for like another 6, 7 months, 8 months or whatever. And so I finished out my tour with them. And the only reason why I left from them early was because those conditions from the TBI that I was talking about came back, and just there, I would leave. It was snowing in Afghanistan. I remember I left the radios. I left the push to talks on top of the truck, and I would freak out, and I get there in the morning and they're frozen to the top of the truck. And my NCOIC he was not a nice guy. And so I I started going through a lot of like anger and depression while I was out there, because I didn't know what was happening to me. And one day I got mad at him, and I wanted to kill him. I wanted to what's it called, when you frag your
Yeah.
your superior. And I was just telling myself, you know what I'm just gonna do? I'm gonna go in there. I'm just gonna blast him with my 9 right now. And he called me to the room, and he was on the other side of the camp. And I was walking over there, and I had it behind my back the whole time. And I really did not like him. Just talking about it, just I don't like, because he treated me because I was a National Guard soldier and he was active duty. He was just always on me, always talking trash. So obviously, I didn't kill him. I wouldn't be here right now, but those thoughts were going through my head, and it was all because of the TBI. It was just I didn't seek treatment. Wasn't getting treatment for the things that I had seen. The bodies, the kids that were blown up that day when we had gotten attacked at Camp Green, and the little girls that had died that day, and their bodies, just the way it looked. It was just you'll never see it again.
You
And
said attacked at Camp Green. Was that different than the Kabul attack, or
no,
that's the
no,
same
that
attack?
was the same. It's the same attack. Yeah, it's the
Okay.
same. It was just called Camp Green,
And
and
there was civilian casualties as a result of that attack.
oh yeah, yeah. On the YouTube videos, you'll see on one of the vehicles because there was a high school, there was a school next to us, and they would send letters. The Taliban would say, "Hey, if you continue to send these kids to school, we're going to poison the water." And sure enough, they poisoned the water, and the kids got sick. And then they said, "Okay, if you continue to support the Americans, like these are letters that they were sending to the principal, you know." Um, and so they didn't care because they were girls, they were females, so they killed them. They were on their way to school at 6 in the morning when they attacked. It was like 6:05 or something like that. And, five or six little girls died, and then parents that were dropping their kids off. The cars on YouTube, you can just see the vehicle. They're gone. They're skeletons stuck to the steering wheel. But yeah, and so sorry, where I left off at. Oh yeah, so I decided to not frag my E7. Lucky for him. And what I ended up doing was I ended up plotting on allowing him to get killed, which was one day we were out and we had a report of we had a bolo list of who to look out for and whatnot, and there was this dog, and at that time they were sewing up, putting IEDs inside of dogs and donkeys and whatever. Well, one of these dogs, we were coming back from mission one day, and he was the lead vehicle, and I was right behind him. And I was E5, so I was always TC in my vehicle, and I had my guys with me all the time. And they always told us don't get out of the vehicle, blah blah blah. Well, a few shots were fired, and there was a dog close to the gate, and the dog died before it could get to the gate. So they weren't going to detonate it. So we stopped, and we automatically knew, like, no, this dog's loaded, because you could see the blood already seeping out. We're like, why is this dog bleeding already? Like, what's going on, And we had this system, like a boomerang system, where it would tell you where the shot came from, how many meters or yards, whatever direction. And so I stopped my vehicle, and he got out of the vehicle, and he wanted me to get out to secure, to pull, 5 and 25 and, check the area and secure it. I didn't get out. And I kept telling myself, I told my driver, just let him. And he was jumping up and down. And I was like, man, I hope he gets blasted. I hope he gets blasted. And he didn't. But we came back, and he was mad at me, and he was pissed. And he got on me about it for not getting out of the vehicle, but I just laughed it off. And a few weeks later, I told him, I was like, hey, you know what? I gotta go to sick call, because I'm not feeling well. I'm not right. Like, there's thoughts in my head that I shouldn't be thinking. I didn't tell him what it was. I wanted to kill him or nothing like that, or I wanted him to get hurt. But so I seen a neurosurgeon at the TMC center, and they're like, yeah, no, you got to go to Bagram. So I went to Bagram. The neurologist examined me. He goes, nah, you have TBI for sure. And then that's when my Afghanistan career was over. They said, we're sending you to Germany. Once they sent me to Germany, I knew it. I was done. And so got to Germany, landed, seen the neurosurgeon. Neurosurgeon verified everything. Yeah, they did a nerve conduction study on my arms. They did on my face. I couldn't feel nothing. They cranked it up. I don't feel nothing. And yeah, so that's when I started to, they forced me to get treatment, and from there I went to Fort Bliss, and I stayed at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas for like 6 months. I learned how to write again, learned how to read again, learned how to speak right. I went to speech classes.
Yeah.
I was in a unit. I was in a unit called Community-Based Warrior Transition Unit, where like guys that get medevac and they still need treatment. You go there. Guys with TBI. A lot of guys had the same injuries that I did, and some of them it turned into anxiety. Some it turned into depression. Mine turned into hypervigilance. And there's another story on that of how I started to backslide when I came back from Afghanistan. I started just drinking a lot, and you know I started linking up with guys that I grew up with that were still involved in street life, and started hanging around them, and it just things were just not good for me when I came back. That coupled with I was still in the army, and I was pumped up, and I was the E6 when I came back, so I was even more pumped up. And but now I had this drug problem, and the drug problem was Percocets. And the flight surgeon he gave me my first Percocet. He goes, "How many do you want?" I said, I don't even know what Percocets are." He gave them to me, and I was hooked. And the VA or the Army kept on giving them to me, 90 pills a bottle. If I lost the bottle, they'd give me another 90. If I lost another bottle, they'd give me another bottle. And so I was stuck on those for about a good to about 2 years right before I got out of the Army.
Man, bro, that's fucking nuts. The whole thing has been
Yeah.
nuts. Eventually were you able to kick that habit of Percocets?
Yeah. So in 2014, I had submitted for my VA claim, and it was easy, easy, man. I've had one of the best experiences with the VA because I had all my paperwork lined up. I had my serious incident reports from Afghanistan. I had, everything that I was going through was backed up by paperwork, by NCOs, by colonels that were there with me, served with me. So I had it real easy. My claim only took 8 months. I got my back pay. I got my 100%. It's like 180% with all my conditions, but they only count you up to 100. And when that happened, I was like, the Army was like, well, you could stay in another 6 years. So I signed another 6 year, contract. I'll stay in another 6 years. So when I did that, I stopped working, and I didn't have to report back to my unit no more. I just had to report once a month. And so I was like on a medically non-deployable. And so pretty much I just got high on Percocets all the time and drank. And I was linking up with other Army buddies that I had served with in Afghanistan and Kosovo, who were in the same situation, that were addicted to Percocets, and they still are, a lot of them. And we would just be sharing pills, back and forth. Hey, are you out? Yeah, I'm out. Hey, come over. And I didn't realize that the VA was bringing me down. And then they tell me that, oh, you have these conditions. I don't have PTSD. What are you talking about? I never submitted a claim for that. It was so weird. They gave me that thing. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. But they gave it to me for PTSD and TBI and herniated disc and nerve damage and all that. And I finally came off. To be honest with you, I came off because I had met one of the most beautiful women that I'm still with right now. In 2018, she tells me, "If you're gonna be with me, you can't be taken." And I was so in love with her that I knew that I loved her more than I loved those pills. But dude, I was so strung out on them. Like, I couldn't go nowhere without them. Like, I would be like, no, I don't want to go to the liquor store. I don't want to go to the grocery store. I'm out. I gotta wait till I got my prescription. No, I'm not gonna go on vacation. No, I'm not, and I just said to myself, you know what? Okay, I'll stop. And I kicked it, and it was like 3 or 4 days of hell. And to be honest with you, what helped was I smoked a lot of weed, and it really helped me kick the opiates. And then the next day, well, after a week, I went to the VA and I told them, you know what, take me off these Percocets. And people were like, oh, what are you gonna do that for? You can sell them. I was like, I don't want them in my possession. I don't
Right.
want these no more. And so yeah, so I came off, and now they say love conquers all, and my love for her and her love for me really made me get off of those, and I started to see clearly after that. It's so weird.
That's what's up, man. I'm glad you were able to,
Yeah.
kick that, meet the love
Oh
of your
man.
life, serve your country honorably, get out of the freaking hood. Man,
Yeah.
uh, if you can say a positive message right now to the viewers out there, what would you tell them?
The the biggest positive message would be, I had kind of explained a little bit earlier in the interview, was my dream as a kid was to join the army from before I even started getting in trouble with, neighborhood or whatever. And if that dream, even if it was to become a ballerina and you're 60 years old and you're a female and you're like, I want to become, you can still do that, or if you still want to be a firefighter, you become a volunteer firefighter. There's ways to still achieve your dreams. And there's a lot of obstacles in between. And you just got to look for the obstacles that you can get over the easiest. Just push the ones that are the hardest out of the way. And the biggest obstacle for me was the Percocets, because everything revolved around it. Everything revolved. I couldn't do nothing with it. And my message again is going to be, those dreams can still come true no matter what age. I was still able, through all these years, I waited patiently to join the army, and everything fell in place. I met the right people. I stayed in contact with the right people. Even no matter how many bad decisions you make, you can make that right decision to make your dream come true. And my right decision was, what? Instead of discouraging myself and saying, what, I have a criminal record, I have a felony, I have armed robbery, they're not gonna let me in the army. I'm not even gonna call. No, I called every year, man. I called every year, stayed on until someone said, yes, come on in.
Damn, dude, my hat's off to you, bro. Thank you for serving our country.
You're
And
welcome.
damn, bro, it was an honor having you on the show, dude. It was
Oh, thank
like
you.
I said, yeah, man. Hopefully your story will reach out to many and help a lot of individuals. Um, with that, stay on the line. I'm gonna close out and then we'll chop it up a little bit.
All
There
right.
you guys have it, folks. Man, this dude's story is wild from the beginning to the middle to the end. It's just like how everything played out. And as you can see, man, it's never too late. It's never too late to change. And here's the proof. Keep pushing forward.